With Virtual Console hopefully near and the rumors of an SNES Classic on our mind, we've been thinking a lot about the good old Super Nintendo. So today we're bringing you our top 10 most wanted SNES games on Switch Virtual Console or the SNES Classic. What's up, everybody? It's Zach from SwitchForce. I've got Jake and Gabe here with me, and we have compiled a nice list of Super Nintendo games we want to play soon. And whether that be on the upcoming Switch Virtual Console that hopefully is revealed and released at E3, or on the rumored and most likely realistic SNES Mini releasing later this year, we just want these games to be able to be played in some fashion in 2017. So we've each picked 3 and then one as a group choice. Now, we know we couldn't possibly address all the great SNES titles, so we've more focused on ones that are near and dear to our hearts. And we know some of them are already available on past virtual consoles or on other handheld platforms, but we just wanted to go with our favorites. And if there's ones that you love and you want to make your own list in the comments, that is awesome. Definitely love to see your reaction to our list as well as your own list. But here we go. So I've picked 3, Jake's picked 3, Gabe's picked 3, and then the group choice at the end. Let's kick it off with a game from good old Jake.
All right, I'll pick one that will be the most absurd probably to viewers out there. But this game was literally like one of the first video games that I played like more than once. Like it wasn't just like, oh, like at a friend's house or like, well, I was like 2, so I didn't really have friends I went to. But like, you know what I mean? Like just like an arcade or like a Chuck E. Cheese or something. But WrestleMania, the arcade game, was like one of the first games I can remember playing when I was like 2.5 on the SNES with you, Zach, and like really getting into and like one of my very first video game experiences. So it has a very near and dear spot next to my heart. I don't like wrestling anymore. I don't know how this game would hold up today. There's like 6 characters to start out with, and I think you can unlock 2 more. But playing as The Undertaker and Doink again would be such a huge nostalgic factor for me. Like I found it once, like when I was like 13 or something in an arcade and played it, and it was like so great just to experience that feeling again that I had to put it on the list because it was such a nostalgic factor for me.
Yeah, one of the first games we really battled in our lifetime.
Yeah,
which
I mean, how can I
memory.
I can't leave that out. It's just too like much a part of my video game experience and adventure that I had to put it.
And in general, I think they're pretty solid games. They're well regarded, the wrestling titles of that time frame. And I enjoyed being Doink. I enjoyed watching you try and be the Undertaker and then enact the moves in real life. And it sort of led to this strange, short obsession with wrestling where we would watch it late at night. I don't know. It was a very interesting time in our lives, but it's a very cool game, and I respect the choice.
Thank you.
Gabriel, take us to a different genre.
So for my first game, I am going with an obscure game I've come to realize. I thought everybody played this back in the day, but I am very wrong. Secret of Evermore, a classic Squaresoft game on the Super Nintendo, of course. And it is a story about a boy and his dog through very different iterations. You start off in what at that time was like modern times, but then there's this like time machine. You go back to the Stone Age. At some point, you go to the future where your dog turns into like a toaster robot dog. So like the concept of it is like very out there. There's like time traveling and all kinds of other weird stuff, if we're being honest. But what I really liked about the game back in the day was that I can't say that this is the first game that ever did this, but the dog had his own health bar. And I hadn't ever seen that before in a video game where like, yeah, you play a character, but then like somebody that's like actively with you. Cause yes, this is an RPG, but it's not turn-based like any like Final Fantasy games or anything like that. This is like action-based. So the dog had his own like health bar. You had to like heal him. It was like very cool. And
Gabe, did you have a dog growing up, or is this like your fantasy because you never
no?
had
This
a
was
dog?
this was my replacement for a dog growing up.
This was Gabe's pet experience as a child.
Yeah, the boss battles in the game were very cool. The very different settings. You would go from like forest to like desert to like future. Like there was a lot in this game, and from what I've like just seen like tangentially, like I don't think this game is as beloved as it is like in my heart. But I think everybody recognizes that it was like a quality game for the time. And Secret of Evermore, I know you guys have no experience with it, but if it were to come back, I would beg you guys to play this.
We'll take your word for it, Gabe.
Nope.
I think that's one of the coolest parts of Switch Virtual Console or the SNES Classic is getting to hopefully experience some really great games that I missed. Because I played a bunch back in that era, but without the internet and without sort of the social media exposure to say like, hey, this game's great. I definitely missed out on some, and I like the idea of being able to go back even to the N64, the GameCube, like all those eras are really fun to reinvest in and find titles that are fantastic that you just may have skipped over. With that being said, one that I think is a little bit obscure that I absolutely would love to see come to both of these, most likely the Switch Virtual Console, is Uniracers. This is one of my favorite racing games of all time. It's right up there with Mario Kart. This is a 2D racing game that is as it sounds. It's unicycles racing along crazy like roller coaster-esque tracks. It's got a little bit of like a Tron vibe to it, but definitely more bright and happy. And there's some pretty intense courses, and then there also is a trick mode where you're going for a high score to do all sorts of weird flips and maneuvers that only a unicycle could accomplish. Best part being there are no actual humans in this game. It's all just the cycles themselves racing around, and it's really intense. It's a great game for giving yourself thumb calluses.
That's what I was going to say.
And nerve issues, but it's super fun and super worth it.
That's what I was going to say. The biggest downfall of this game is that it will bruise your thumb, like legitimately crush your thumb. But yeah, it's still a great game.
I would love playing that like multiplayer on the Switch, local multiplayer with the Joy-Con. It would work perfectly, and it would be a blast. Give us Uniracers. The game is fantastic. If you haven't heard of it, you owe it to yourself to check it out in some form.
All right. I'm going to go with another kind of nostalgic type game here and say Kirby's Dreamland number 3. Because in that game, you get to ride things like gerbils and owls and blobs. And I probably, again, wouldn't hold up as like the most exciting game today. But the feeling of like entering a room and being like, yes, there's that gerbil and I get to ride him for the next level was like so ecstatic to me as a 3-year-old or however old I was when I played it that I would love to see it. And it is like a decent Kirby game that people like mention. So it's not like complete garbage, but I would definitely like to re-experience the fun of a old Kirby game like that, especially since it is Kirby's 25th anniversary.
You're all about those animal antics, and you'd rather have this one than Kirby Superstar?
I don't think I ever played Kirby Superstar, to be completely honest. That's why I didn't put it.
My favorite Kirby game.
I know, but does it have riding animals? I don't remember.
I'm not sure, but we'll have to swap. You can
that's
play
that's the whole
and
point.
I'll play this one. Wonderful. Gabe, what are we going to play from your list?
All right, so now we know what Jake is all about. And apparently I'm all about like time traveling and playing RPGs because the next game on my list is Chrono Trigger. And I kind of forgot how many things in common Chrono Trigger and Secret of Evermore have. Except, Chrono Trigger is obviously the better game. It's a classic game, very, very well regarded. But the game starts off with time traveling. Man, just even thinking about such like you guys have played Chrono Trigger, right?
Nope.
I played a few hours on the 3DS or the DS port.
So the beginning of Chrono Trigger with like Luca and her dad, and like that's like a classic beginning to the game. And just like in Secret of Evermore, there are like different like not timelines, but there are different like settings. You do play like in the future, and there are like nights, and like it's very, very cool stuff. One of like the seminal RPGs. Like if you've ever like done any research into like where RPGs came from and like what some of the most well-regarded ones of all time are, Chrono Trigger is somewhere atop that list. And yeah, I can't remember if it's on Wii U Virtual Console. It might be. If it is, I might actually just go check that out again. Like it's amazing. A traditional turn-based RPG, by the way. So. I know people don't like that sometimes, but it does use like an active time battle system. So it's like a little bit like faster than like the traditional Final Fantasies, but it's like a mixture of both. It's very, very cool.
It's the Wii Virtual Console, just so you're aware.
Okay, well there you go.
Wii Virtual Console houses Chrono Trigger, and the Wii Virtual Console holds my next game as well, but It's probably my favorite SNES game, and that's Donkey Kong Country 2. Love the franchise. Love the current iterations in the form of Donkey Kong Country Returns, Tropical Freeze. Those games are fantastic to me. I hope that... obviously I'd love to see Retro do something else, but I hope we get another DK on Switch in some form, some fashion. Donkey Kong Country 2, though, was a game that I got around the same time that me and Jake were battling out in WrestleMania, and it has a special place in my heart for being one of the first games that I felt really challenged me, and being one of the first games that I felt really required a lot of skill and hand-eye coordination. And it does. It's a pretty tricky game. And Dixie became one of my favorite Nintendo characters, or favorite gaming characters, with her hair twirl. And I loved the aesthetic of that title. I love the fact that they go to this like creepy amusement park. I love the Kremlings and the evolution of the Kremlings from DKC 1 to DKC 2. Love the minecart tracks. I love some of the weird stuff as well. You know, talking about animals in Kirby. All of the animal antics in DK, those are always a good time. The frog, the snake,
That was
all sorts of
Nintendo's
great
go-to,
stuff.
man. That was their money maker.
Yeah, and while there, in hindsight, there are some issues with Donkey Kong Country. I do feel like it's aged very well, and that one in particular, I think, just because it's a bit more cinematic and diverse than DKC 1, and the inclusion of Dixie, as well as I don't know. I feel like Dixie and Diddy just form a more interesting duo, and some of the new Animal Buddies. That is possibly my favorite Super Nintendo game, and definitely one that there's tons of iterations, but I would have to have it again on Switch or the SNES Classic.
Good choice. I remember trying to keep up with you in that game, and like you would die, and I would be your assistant, and I would just get yelled at because I could not complete the things that obviously you couldn't complete. So, yeah, that was very fun but scary, frustrating time for me. I'll move on to my third game, which is a little bit more mainstream, I guess, and that is Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. And this game, I don't know that I've ever completed 100%. I know I've started it multiple times, but I don't know that I've ever played it all the way through to the end. But it has some of the weirdest, wackiest characters and bosses that are so simplistic looking. Like, there's a lot of circle bosses, like Bart or Bert with his pants, and the raven that walks around the moon and stuff like that. But I really like that this is kind of like a divergence from the typical Mario Bros. Series, and it had a totally different art style and like a lot of color, and like it's the storybook aesthetic to it was really intriguing to me as like a creative child. So yeah, a game that I think is a classic game, and would love to either rebeat or actually beat 100% one time through.
How about that Baby Mario cry, though?
That's a little shrill. It's a little bit ear piercing, but the game is worth it.
Hey, if people can like Logan while it has a screaming young girl, then people can love Mario while it has a screaming young boy.
Sure.
Absolutely. Gabriel, give us your final selection.
I just want to point out how great Squaresoft was back in the day, because this is another Squaresoft game. Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars. Published by Nintendo, of course, but Squaresoft developed it, and it was the first time I ever saw the like 3D renders in like video games. Like, that wasn't a thing that was super common. It was usually like sprites and like more like 2D stuff, but like Mario like looked like 3D. You couldn't move around like in like real 3D space or anything like that, but this was like revolutionary, at least like in my childhood, for visuals alone. On top of that, very cool little story with Mario, and you have the giant sword falling on Bowser's castle. Like, it was memorable stuff, and I would love to go back and play it. There has been a ton of Mario RPGs since then, but this one like holds a special place in my heart for being like one of the first ones.
Did you beat it?
Probably not.
Okay.
Honestly, it's hard to remember. The game came out in 1996. I was 6 years old. I don't think I beat it.
Yeah, that's one that I didn't beat, and one I nearly put on my list because I do want to go back and experience the entirety. And I know there's a lot of references and characters and instances that are lost on me at times. I mean, I know the typical, the Mallow and the Geno and the baseline stuff, but some of the later areas, some of the more crazy bosses, it's interesting to see Mario take on non-Mushroom Kingdom villains and creatures that wouldn't typically, be found in a Mario title, and I'm eager to experience that. So that's one I'd love to have, SNES Classic or the Switch, but especially on the Switch, because of these longer form titles, I'd love to take it with me.
Shout out to the Smithy gang.
Who are they?
They're in the game. They're led by Smithy. He's like a robot. He's like a blacksmith or whatever, something like that. You don't remember him?
No.
Either way.
I like the idea of it, though, and I hope that we get to play it soon. And that brings me to my final title, which is one that is, again, dipped in nostalgia, and that's Mega Man X. This was a game that me and my best friend would play a lot. to the point where we were repeating it to see like how quickly we could beat it, or if we didn't have any other games to play, we would use it as sort of our like afternoon hangout game to just get through, because it's not the most difficult Mega Man. It may not even be the best Mega Man, but it's the one I know the most completely. And it's one that I do think has a good flow to it. I think it does strike a nice balance between difficulty and fun. And it has, for me, the most memorable bosses, because those are the ones that I played the most. I mean, outside of the OG, like, you know, Gutsman and Cutsman and those people, like, the Mega Man X bosses are very... I can see them in my head right now. So it's a fun game. I think it works well on Switch Virtual Console or NES Classic. I assume Mega Man's got to be a part of both of those packages, and it would be fun to have, like, similar to DK or any Mario, like having those on the go, being able to play a stage quickly, like, works out pretty well.
I remember like collecting like every piece for like the armor that you can like find in that game. I have very fond memories of that game as well.
That brings us to our 10th choice, which is a group choice. And obviously, there's a lot of phenomenal SNES games that we just couldn't include, because this wasn't a list to list the top 10 best SNES games, but the ones we just were most eager to play. So we have had our fill of Zelda lately, so we're going to leave Link to the Past off of this, although that's possibly the best Super Nintendo game ever made. And now we are going to instead... It was a tough call. We were debating between two titles, and we ended up choosing Super Mario World, just because I think all three of us would love to have a tried and true Mario game on Nintendo Switch. Like, that's the one. I mean, hopefully they bring like a whole slew. Hopefully we get 1, 2, 3 World, Yoshi's Island, and 64 and Sunshine. Like, that would be phenomenal. But if they start slow and start small like we're expecting, Mario World is the one I'd like to be like, hey, this is my first Mario experience on Nintendo Switch. And I think that it is a universally beloved title, and one that we can fully agree on as a trio.
I love
Agreed.
this game. It's super fun, and I think would be still good today to play again.
Absolutely. Those are our 10 choices for the SNES games we most want to see and play again soon, whether it be on Switch Virtual Console or on the heavily rumored SNES Classic. Let us know your thoughts on the games we picked. If you have any fond memories with those, share those down in the comments below. And if you have any special selections of your own that you have to see on Switch Virtual Console or on that SNES Classic, let us know those as well. I'm thinking it's going to be interesting, because the SNES Classic is going to be much more of a greatest hits, whereas the Virtual Console is open to a whole lot more variety, I feel. So to see how they balance those two and what games end up being in the SNES Classic, what 30 or so games, will be really fun to see. And I like what they did with the NES Classic, where you got like some series, right? So maybe you'll get DKC 1, 2, and 3, or at least 1 and 2. Things of that nature could be cool. And then if you want more of a bite-size, on-the-go, portable experience, get us that Virtual Console on Switch. It should be coming soon. Until that time, everybody, thanks so much for watching. Make sure that like button if you enjoyed today's video. It helps us out a lot. And definitely subscribe if you want to stay up to date on all the latest and greatest about Virtual Console and about Switch. We'll bring it your way ASAP. Hit that notification bell if you want to be the first to know. Until that time, though, for myself, Jake, and Gabe, Switch Force out.